Everybody who's in show business is somebody who wants to be there. In her case, she had to be there. I mean, she didn't even have the urge to. She just did it, and everybody said, look at that. She was a star at 4, and one of the biggest stars in the country.
The minute she was born, the doctor slapped her, and she started singing.
Believe me when I tell you, she's a history of show business.
Every phase of entertainment for literally 87 years.
The longest career I've ever heard of in show business.
Vaudeville, radio.
Broadway.
The history of television.
She used to entertain Al Capone. He loved her.
She was tough.
She was clearly a woman.
One of the boys.
She had colorful language and didn't mind using it.
She was outspoken, there's no question about it. But she had a loud voice.
I think people resent the fact that she knows so much.
You can't be in the business all your life without being tough.
She cut through barriers.
Paved her own way.
There was a woman that was a heroic, bigger-than-life character.
She'll cut your head off. And rightfully so, by the way. I'm with her.
Rosemary.
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 And she's the only one left. Can I tell you this story? Are you rolling? God love you. God love you. First memory I can recall, I guess, was in New York. 14th Street in New York at that time was the 42nd Street of New York today. All the theater, all the stage shows, everything. And my mother loved show business. And so she used to take me. I was 3, 4 years old. So the minute I came home from seeing the show, I would sing to my mother's friends, as I called them lovingly, the Polacks, because my mother was Polish and they were Polish. One day, the Polish people said, we entered her in an amateur contest at the Mecca Theater on 14th Street. They bought my dress, which I still have. They bought the brocaded shoes, Mary Jane shoes, which are at the Smithsonian. And a 4-year-old kid singing like Sophie Tucker.
I looked around for the longest time, but the one to love.
And moving like Sophie Tucker, and sounding like Sophie Tucker.
She didn't sound like a little girl. Even then, she sounded like a mature woman.
She never had a child's voice. She had an adult voice. Somebody put the wrong box in there.
Who the hell do you think won the contest? After that, my mother and father took us to Atlantic City. At that time, nightclubs were not like today. Nightclubs had family people. You could bring your children. They had a line of chorus girls, fully dressed, a comic, a singer, a dancer. And so we went to the Little Club in Atlantic City. Evelyn Nesbit was starring. Evelyn Nesbit was a big star at that time because of the scandal that she was in. Her husband shot her boyfriend. And I think he went to jail if the guy was dead. I don't remember. I wasn't there. So we went to see her because she was a big star. Naturally, I'm watching her sing, and what do? I start to sing with her. She, being smart, instead of stopping and making a whole big deal, took me by the arm and brought me on stage, and I sang with her. And I heard the crowd saying, "Get the kid back. We want the kid. Get the kid back. We want him to sing." Evelyn Nesbit said to my father, "What is her name?" And he said, "Dainty Rosemary." And she said, "She's a baby. Call her Baby Rosemary." So that's how Baby Rosemary came about. We went back home, and NBC had heard about this child wonder. My father signed a contract with NBC. NBC arranged for a radio program at 5 years old, going into 6 years old, coast to coast, and I sang 3 or 4 songs every Sunday morning at 12:15.
In 1920, there was just one radio station attempting a local broadcast, and that was in Pittsburgh. By the time Rose Marie signed with NBC, 60% of American homes had a radio. And NBC was the only network broadcasting to the entire nation. Rose Marie's fame took off. She became known as the darling of the airwaves. And this happened before Shirley Temple was even born.
And she sang these songs, and we didn't realize what she looked like until we saw her picture in Variety. She had a cover of Variety, and at 4 or 5, everybody knew her.
I was doing this radio show, and the mail came in and said, "That's not a child, that's a 45-year-old midget. No child sings like that."
You got a bubble button. I like a bubble button. Ah, you bubble button. Oh, gee, don't feel like that.
NBC was affiliated with RKO theaters all across the country, so they booked me in the latter part of vaudeville in the RKO houses to prove I was a child.
Predating the cinema and radio, vaudeville was a massive network of theaters throughout North America. Any Given Night was a mashup of singers, dancers, magicians, jugglers, trained animals, acrobats, and really anything else that sold tickets, all sharing the same stage.
I played every theater across the country, back and forth. Now, the Gary Society, which is the Children's Society of New York, called my mother in and said she's not allowed to sing in New York because of the child labor law. And they said, there's got to be something we could work out. So the plan was I would go out and do my show, and they would arrest my father. For 5 minutes, he would come back home. I would do my second show. They would arrest him again. I'd come back and do the third show. They would arrest him again. He was arrested 128 times. When I was about 10 years old, I'm working at the Palace Theater in Chicago with Milton Berle. The doorman says to my father, "There's a man wants to see you outside." He went outside. It was Al Capone. He said to my father, he said, "Hello, Happy." I thought that was strange. Nobody ever called him Happy.
He knew those kind of people. He lived in that kind of a world.
I found out later that his nickname was Happy Hank. My father used to go into these places and burn up the place if you didn't join the union. You know, those kind of guys. He wasn't very, very important. He was one of the do this and do that guys. But they knew him as Happy Hank. He also ran the Diana Ballroom, which is where my mother met him. She loved to dance. She was a wild little girl. She was crazy. And that's where she met my father. But anyway, I looked at Al Capone. He was very strange looking. He was heavy. He wore a dark suit, well-dressed, very well-dressed, hat on the side. The boys want to meet the kid. The doorman is white. And he says, "You know who that is?" And we got in the car and went to Cicero, which is out of Chicago a little bit. And we walked into this mansion, which didn't belong there, this mansion. It really didn't belong there. It was out of place. And the dining room was as long as you could see. And so all the guys were there. All the big guys were there. And they all came over to me and gave me a hug and said, "We think you're wonderful. We love you. And we're glad to meet you." And I said, "Thank you." They went back to the table, and Al gave me a dinner ring with 3 diamonds in it, which I still have. And picked me up in his arms and said, "You call me Uncle Al from now on. You understand?" And I said, "Yeah, Uncle Al." Okay. And he says, "Anything you need, anything you want, you call me." Turned to my father. He says, "We'll take care of her from here on in." And out we went back to the theater.
I think she should have been managed better when she was young.
My mother was the force of me liking it and doing it. My father run the show. My father was boss, and he was a mean man. I disliked my father intensely because my father had another family. I was born illegitimately. My father had another family going with 2 kids, same names as my brother and I.
He was a rough, gruff man who was going to take advantage of his property. And his property was baby Rosemary.
The minute I won the contest and we went to Atlantic City and I started working the different places, he knew there was a buck there. And he took charge. He ran everything. He was my manager, my agent, everything. And I was making thousands, and my father took it all.
At the height of success, baby Rosemary was making over $1,000 a performance. Her voice landed her big jobs, not just on radio, but theatrical cartoons like Betty Boop. There's no way to know how much money her father made, but it's millions of dollars in today's currency. And Ro, she never saw a penny.
I have no idea that my career was building. I just loved what I did. I did it without question. I never said, no, I don't want to do that. I loved every bit of it. In fact, I still love it today. I really love it today.
Work meant everything. Work meant everything. And to do your best meant everything. To always be at your best. And she never went on stage without this. And she had great respect for an audience, which is something that you don't see anymore.
Because I love to work for an audience and I love to hold them in the palm of my hand, which I do. That's a secret. I was now about 14 and ugly at age, very awkward. Not a lady, not a grown-up, not a child. I was an in-between till I got to be about 15, and a very wonderful thing happened.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a song from Baby Rosemary. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you that she no longer is a baby. For today, she's a grown-up, lovely young lady. And we call her Miss Rosemary.
I was only 16, 17 years old. And I started playing theaters in and around New York. And I played the Roxy Theater. I played the Capitol Theater on Broadway. Till I started doing nightclub work.
With Prohibition now over, when the sun went down, Americans flocked to the nightclubs. And on stage, the biggest names of the era. And behind the curtain, the biggest mobsters of the time.
When I played Copacabana in New York, I was sitting with some friends, and the maitre d' came over, Lopez, and he said, "Mr. Fisher wants to see you." I said, "I don't know, Mr. Fisher. I'm with my friends, leave me alone." "Mr. Fisher wants to see you." "Oh," I said, "oh, okay." And I said, "Excuse me," and I went up to the lounge, and there was Joe Frascetti.
Joe Frascetti, Chicago gangster, cousin of Al Capone, the man who would later get Frank Sinatra investigated by the FBI.
And I said, "Why didn't you tell me you changed your name?" He says, "Never mind, at least you came up. I came to see you. How you doing, honey? Everything all right? You need anything? No. Want something to drink? No. You want something to eat? No. Everybody treating you all right? Okay. Where you working next?" I said, "I really don't have anything booked after this." He said, "Well, you're going to play Tahoe." "Oh, okay." And that's the way it went. I was going from one place to another, all because of the boys. They were absolutely wonderful to me.
That era was the best era. You had to work. You just didn't go in and do a TV show. You went from Buffalo to Cleveland. You really had to work hard. With World War II on, Americans needed an escape, which kept performers like Rose Marie busy as hell.
Date is 1944. I'm working at the Terrace Room in Newark, New Jersey. And there was this soldier sitting there. He says, "You were very good." He says, "I enjoyed it." I said, "Thank you."
That soldier was a trumpet player named Bobby Guy.
He started, like everybody, playing jobs in bars and little bands, and he gradually worked up till he played with Kay Kaiser, who had a very popular radio show called Kay Kaiser's College of Musical Knowledge, and Bobby played first trumpet.
Bobby was then drafted, landing him a gig in the U.S. Army Band and a transfer to New York City.
And I went home and I started thinking about him. I said, he's weird, you know, he's very weird. The next night I went in, he was sitting there. So now I go home the second night. The next morning I get a telegram saying, "Caught your act, need new material, and can book you 4 weeks on the Gus Sun time," which broke me up because that was strictly a funny telegram. And I get into the club that night. I said, "I got your wire." "Oh, did you know it was me?" I said, "Yeah, I knew it was you." One of my best girlfriends, Jerry, came down with me and I introduced her to Bobby. I said, "How do you like him?" She says, "He's all right." I said, "That's the man I'm gonna marry." She says, "Are you kidding? You're gonna marry that fat sergeant? You only know him 3 days." I said, "He's not fat." I said, "He's just chubby." "Yes, that's the man I'm gonna marry." "How do you know?" "I don't know, I'm just telling you. That's the man I'm gonna marry."
Bobby was full-bodied. He was chunky. He didn't look fat, but he didn't look like a muscle builder, with a big smile.
She was crazy in love with him, and he was crazy in love with her. And Frank was absolutely panicking that she was going to get married and go away. And there was a lot of problems.
We get a little more friendly. Then he says to me, "Gene Krupa opens up after you close here. Would you like to come to the opening?" I said, "I'd love to." And on the way over to Jane Krupa's, now this is a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. He says, "I'm gonna get out of the Army soon." He says, "I gotta go back to California. That's where my clothes are. That's where my horns are. I don't know what's ahead, but if you're willing, I'd like you to go with me and be with me." I said, "Is that a proposal?" He says, "Yes." "You're asking me to marry you?" "Yes." "By telling me you're going to California, that's it?" He says, "That's it. You want to go?" "You mean, do I want to marry you?" I remember this conversation word for word. I said, "Fine."
I remember she was working at the Capitol Theater, doing 4 or 5 a day. And Frank had cops outside and in the theater looking for him to come in and have him arrested. Arrested for what? I don't know. What are you going to arrest him for? But he was that vicious about Bobby Guy.
Bobby came to pick me up, and we walked down Madison Avenue, window shopping and stuff, and just having a great time. And I got into NBC, and Bobby used to wait for me downstairs. He wouldn't come up. When Bobby was waiting at the corner of 52nd Street, so he was holding on to the lamppost like this. My father came up to him like this and said, you stay out of her life, I'm going to kill you, you no good." And he called him every name in the book. By now, a crowd had gotten around, and everybody kept saying, "Hit him, soldier, hit him, soldier." And he kept saying, "You no good SB, you this and that and this thing." And Bobby just kept holding back like this and saying, "He's her father. He's her father. I can't do anything. He's her father. He's, you stay away from my daughter." He says, "So help me God, I'll get out of you."
And the only way she got away was she and Bobby eloped. Otherwise, he wouldn't let her go.
I called my girlfriend Jerry. I said, "Listen, you got to help me. I'm eloping tomorrow." And she said, "Oh my God, come to the house tonight under my window. I will throw you out my suitcases full of clothes." Sure enough, she came that night. I opened the window. I threw my suitcases out the window. We got married in City Hall. And every time the judge says, "Is there anyone here I should this not go through?" I thought my father was going to bust in and go, "Whoa," but he didn't. I got married, wedding night. And he went to AAA and got a list of hotels and how far it was from this hotel to that hotel to this hotel to that hotel, which was all news to me. On the way, I would call up people that I knew. I remember Scarpelli, one of the bosses, one of the big mob bosses. He's a big guy like this. He and his wife, Kate, had become very friendly with me and my father. And she said, "Your father called. Stay out of Chicago. They're looking for you in Chicago." She says, "Come here to St. Louis." Because I had worked at Chase Hotel there. Now I get ready to go to the bathroom with Kay, and my husband is left alone with Jim. Jim says, "Her father called." He says, "You hurt one hair on her head," and he banged the table. The whole table shook. Bobby was scared, so scared. We come out of the ladies' room, and I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me. He's going, "Oh." And when we got out of there and they said goodnight, we went up to the room, and he said, "I've never been through anything like that in my life." He said, "Thought for sure I was going to get shot." And we started on our honeymoon. He said, "This is a motel. We're going to find these all the way to the coast." Now, I had never been to a motel. I didn't even know what they were. It's hard to explain. We didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to do, why we were going to do. We just were very happy and stopped whenever we wanted to stop. Stay overnight whenever we wanted to stay overnight. We had no idea of what was in store for us. We just had a fantastic honeymoon. My father swore up and down that I was going to support my husband, which I never did. Never in a million years. He wasn't that kind of man. He had his own right, his own position, and his own name. He was Bing Crosby's first trumpet player.
Bing Crosby's show was incredibly popular. Next to Jack Benny, it was probably the most popular radio show on the air.
And the way they opened that radio show was the trumpet, solo trumpet.
And if you can imagine yourself sitting with a cold piece of brass like this, and you're called upon when somebody goes, "Now, coast to coast, nationwide," you played the theme, you started the theme all by yourself, sort of like this.
Someone waits for me.
And then the show was on.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest for this evening is a very charming young lady. Very talented, too. A smash dynamite vocalist. Started out in show business, this girl, when she was just a baby. Well, gee, apparently Bobby Guy, our trumpet player, is doing his best to give you some sort of a big send-off, Rosemary. He must be a fan of yours or something. What is this?
Well, I don't know how much of a fan he is, but he is my husband.
I think anybody that ever put my father on a job knew that he had a special sound. And I can still hear it to this day. I know what records he's on. I know what movies he's on. It was unlike any other trumpet player in this town.
Boy, he was something else.
Jerry Lewis was a very good friend of my father's. Jerry had heard this one song called Too Late Blues. My father does a solo on it, and it is the most exquisite piece of music you will ever hear a trumpet player play. Whenever my father was available, he was on a Jerry Lewis film.
He was liked and he was respected for who he was, what he was, and how he played. And he was the best.
Just the opposite of Rosemary. He was a rock, an awfully sweet, sweet guy.
He never strove to be like a star. He was quite happy showing up, playing the job, going home.
I was out here in California, and I had done the Rudy Valley show, and somebody said, you got to work at Slapsy Maxie's. That was the lead club at that time. My husband says, you know you're going to have to do about an hour. Because I used to do about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 3 or 4 songs, and that was it. I said, why? Because you're going to be on all alone. There's going to be no comic, going to be no nothing, just you. No female was doing comedy at that time. Nobody. And little by little, I was doing comedy in my act, singing, and getting more and more into comedy. My reviews opened up with, she's someone to be reckoned with. This young lady with the beautiful gowns and the gorgeous hair and all this and all that. She's a hell of a performer. I couldn't write a better review. I couldn't write one. And now everybody was calling to work and this and that. One night a guy came in who owned the Hollywood Reporter. He said, saw your show, we want you to open in Vegas. I said, what's Vegas? He says, we want you to open with Xavier Cugat and Jimmy Durante. I said, Jimmy? To work with Jimmy? Oh my God, that would be wonderful. Jimmy Durante was a comedian who was a big star. On television, made an awful lot of MGM movies.
Now you point your toe, and then you fix your boa.
I used to do a little piece of Durante in my act.
She did the best Durante of all.
You gotta go round with a smile, and you'll be well dressed all of the while. The real happy guy is in style. So go round and round and round and round and round. Wait a minute, stop the music. Stop the music.
And now I get ready for Vegas. Las Vegas as a city was nothing. It was desert, all desert.
We had one cab driver on the whole strip. His name was Louis. And if you drank, you didn't want to drive, so you hired Louis. The strip was just the El Rancho, the Last Frontier, the Desert Inn, and the Flamingo. That was it. And Vegas, as it exists today, is all because of the Flamingo. Gangster Bugsy Siegel and his partner, Billy Wilkerson, set out to build the highest class casino resort in the U.S.
The Flamingo was an unbelievable thing to everybody. They were afraid of it. Neon lights and bright lights and this. It was like Monte Carlo. The rest was all sand.
Ro opened the Flamingo. She opened it with for Bugsy Siegel.
Bugsy Siegel was very good to me. He was very sweet to me. His girlfriend, Virginia Hill, he called her the Flamingo. That's why that club was called the Flamingo. Nobody knew that. Little secret. Bugsy thought of the Flamingo as a place in Vegas, and the mob loaned him $2 million. And he kept saying, I need more money, because the locals took him for every dime he could get. They did everything wrong, so they could fix it over again and do this and do that. So the mob got mad and said, no more money.
The building costs soared to over $6 million, all borrowed from the East Coast mob. Now, his life literally depended on the success of this building. And everything depended on opening night.
I'm supposed to open tomorrow. It rains. One plane to Vegas does not take off. There was only one plane to Vegas then. In the morning, everybody was on that plane. Xavier Cugat, Abby Lane, Tommy Wonder, Jimmy Durante.
Despite the bad weather, the Hollywood elite showed up.
Opening night, the place is jammed.
Lana Turner, Clark Gable, Barbara Stanwyck.
We had a hell of a crowd. The show was wonderful. It was brilliant. The next night, they were all there again. The third night, they were gone. Everybody went back to California. And we worked to 9 people. And if you want to see something sad, you watch Jimmy Durante work to 9 people. First week, I'm sitting in the coffee shop with the dancer, Tommy Wonder, and we're having a cup of tea, and this man comes in, and he here's your check. I look at my check, and there's $11 missing. And I said, wait a minute, psst, wait, come here, please. Sir, he took $11 out of my check. You tell me what that's for? Tommy Wonder, he's exhausted. He goes, do you know who that was? And I said, no. He said, that's Bugsy Siegel. I said, oh my God, they're going to pick me up in an envelope. How dare you talk to him like that? I didn't know who he was. A few minutes later, he came back. He says, here's your $11. I'm sorry about the mistake. Sweetest man in the world.
$11. Little did she know that Bugsy lost $3,000 that first week. But he didn't give up. He bet it all on the Flamingo and was determined to see it succeed, with Rosemarie as his star.
One night, Bugsy Siegel came over to me and said, here's $10,000, go play some Baccarat. Well, I said, I'm not a shill. I'm a performer. Yeah, but if you get up there and start playing, maybe people come to the table and start playing with you. I don't do this. He said, do it for me. I said, okay. Go. Sure enough, playing with somebody else's money, I won $25,000. And now the second show is going to go, and I got to go on. What do I do with this $25,000? I can't find him. Where the hell is he? I finally put the $25,000 down here. I do my second show. I come back, and he's sitting in a coffee shop there. I said, where have you been? Mr. Siegel, I said, I am not a shill. Here's your damn money. Don't ever do this to me again. And he laughed. He says, you'll be playing here quite a bit. You're all right. I'll never forget that. He says, you're all right. He says, and we'll be seeing you again. I said, thank you, Mr. Siegel. It's been a pleasure. Got my check, and I left. And 5 days later, he was killed. And then Bugsy had the last laugh because it was he's still turning in his grave because it turned out to be quite, look at Vegas today. Vegas today is unbelievable. So little by little, they were building hotels. And every time they built a hotel, one of the boys was behind it.
All the guys from Cleveland, Mo Dalitz and Tucker Brothers, and all those guys came in and took over. Thank goodness, because they were the most wonderful guys in the world to work for. I can't tell you how terrific they were. You're working for the mob, the so-called mob. If you were a good kid and you didn't get out of line or drink or go after their women or gamble, and the world was anything you wanted. You never paid for anything. Thank God for Vegas. Without Vegas, I don't know how I would have raised my family.
Each mob had their own area, and I played them all. And we became very good friends. They looked after me and thought I was the cat's meow.
Once in a while, she would mention some of the tough guys she knew back then.
Mo Sedgway, Doc Mangini, Jerry Maloney, Blackjack, Willie the Ice Pick. That's a good one. Get killed with the ice pick like that.
They treated her like a daughter. They didn't treat her like a girlfriend or somebody they're going to have sex with. They treated her like somebody they were trying to protect and take care of and be good to.
And I knew all of them, and I used to hang out with all of them. And, but I always said, I'm a flamingo girl. Bugsy, his girlfriend, Virginia Hill, said to me, your show is wonderful. Your gowns are beautiful. I said, well, I have this very famous designer in New York. I said, that makes my gown. He's a Frenchman. He's fantastic. She said, they're gorgeous. But she says, I think you should lose a little weight. I said, don't tell anybody, but I'm 5 months pregnant. She said, you're kidding. I said, no, the gowns still fit, but I'm a little overweight. I said, as soon as I have the baby, I'll lose the weight.
In 1947, Rosemary and Bobby welcomed a daughter, Georgiana Marie Guy, affectionately nicknamed Noopy. For a decade, Rosemary traveled the United States headlining various nightclubs and theaters.
I think my mother was on the road most of the time in my early years.
Not typical behavior for a 50s housewife. So, when they could, her family came along.
When I was about 4 years old, Sam Levinson called up my mother and said he would like to have me on the show.
What's your mommy's name, darling?
Rosemary.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the movies, from TV, and from Top Banana, we bring you Rosemary.
So I got on national television and I sang Top Banana. I had a father that was a musician and a mother that was a singer, so I better have a good voice.
If you want to be a top banana, you gotta start from the bottom of the bunch. You gotta know the joke about the bomb inside it. Take it in the kisser with the soda water. If you want to be...
I wasn't baby Rosemary.
I'll talk about Top Banana now. I got a call from Phil Silvers.
In the late 50s, the Army sitcom The Phil Silvers Show would make him a household name. But at this time, he was just a character actor working for MGM.
He says, I want you to do a Broadway show. Phil, I live in California. I can't come here and live in New York with my husband and baby in California. He says, they can come in and visit you, but you need a Broadway show. I want you to do this show. I want you to do this show, please. I said, all right, send me a script. I had wonderful numbers. The duet with Phil and myself, a word a day, stopped the show every night. We did the show was a smash. The reviews came out, it was all about Phil. Not one of us got mentioned. Not one of us. I'm sitting at Sardi's, very depressed. Marlon Brando comes over to me and says, what's the matter? I said, didn't even mention me. He said, I saw the show tonight. He said, you were great. You stopped the show 4 times. I said, I know. They didn't even mention me. He says, F him. He says, you were great. I was there. Remember that. And he walked away.
All that Top Banana hype earned Phil Silvers a Tony Award for his performance and solidified the show as a hit.
They made it into a movie when the show was very successful.
Phil Silvers kept calling me. He said, I want you to do the movie. What can I say? It was not good, period. That's just about the size of it. I had a producer that wanted to make fun and gave me an offer, which I tried to refuse. It was a dirty offer, you want me to tell you? The producer comes over to me and says, I'll show you a few positions if you're interested. And I said, oh, that's funny. Oh, yeah, you're wonderful. That's funny. I'm serious. This could be your picture. And in front of everybody, I go, You couldn't get it up if the flag went by, which didn't set too well with him. All my numbers were cut in the picture. There isn't one number of me in the picture.
I think my mother's experience of doing the film of Top Banana pushed her away from wanting to do movies.
Finally, I decided, gotta get into television. Gotta do some television. That's the thing to do today.
In 1950, only 9% of American households owned television sets. But by 1957, that number grew to 78%. What was first thought of as a novelty quickly became one of the most influential inventions in the history of entertainment.
And they said, you gotta get an agent. Jim Maloney. And I go and see, and I said, it's my reviews from Slapsy Backsies. I'm a good actress. I do comedy. He says, Rosemary Guy? And I said, no, just Rosemary. He said, don't you want a last name? I said, just Rosemary. That's what everybody knows me by. He said, nobody knows you out here by that. I said, they will. It's just Rosemary. I was the first one to have a one-name thing. Now there's Cher, there's Liza, there's everything. I was the first one. So now he calls me one day and he says, I got a script for you.
Gunsmoke, starring James Arness as Matt Dillon.
I said, that's a very big show. Yeah, he says, the part is Mrs. Munger. Okay. I get the script, I read it. Mrs. Munger, 60 years old. I'm adorable, white glove to cutie. And I'm gonna play a 60-year-old woman? No, damn well I'm not gonna get it. I know that in my heart I'm not gonna get it. I figured, well, my voice is low, I'll make it lower. And the line in the script was, poorly, thank you. I said, poorly, thank you. He says, that's enough. He says, thank you. And I said, okay. And John Rich, the director, comes over to me, he says, would you mind cutting your nails? I said, what? He said, would you mind cutting your nails? I said, why? He said, I don't think a woman, 60-year-old woman sawing would have nails like that. I said, you want me for this part? He says, I think you'll be great. I said, thank you. And I got the part. That was my first television show in California. It was Gunsmoke.
After Gunsmoke, Rosemary found herself with a huge break. She landed the lead role in Just Off Broadway, a pilot produced to replace I Love Lucy's summertime slot.
All right, rise and shine up and at 'em. Let's go. Here we go. Up and at 'em.
But it didn't get picked up. Then she guest starred on The Jackie Gleason Show, My Sister Eileen, and The Bob Cummings Show.
One day, I get a call from the casting office saying they want you down at Desilu to see Danny Thomas. I said, finally got it. Finally got the guest shot. She says, no, this is for a new show called The Dick Van Dyke Show. I said, what's a Dick Van Dyke?
Nobody ever heard of me.
So I went down there. That's when I met Carl Reiner.
So we're looking for a woman writer. And somebody said there's only one person to play this role, Rosemary.
And Carl said, I hear you're terrific. I said, yeah, I said, I'm pretty good, you know. I said, may I ask what this is all about?
Dick Van Dyke is a head writer on a comedy show. He goes and slaves away on that while Mary Tyler Moore stays at home and deals with that creepy kid.
And Carl said, there's about 3 comedy writers, so forth and so on, and so forth and so on. And I said, who plays the third comedy writer?
And I was thinking of the young guy like Mel Brooks. And I was thinking, we got to find a Mel Brooks. And Rosie said, there's only one guy who can play this other part. And she mentioned Maury Hampton. She cast him like that.
I said, we're very friendly. Maury wrote all material for my act. We've been friends since I've been 11 years old. And I came home and I called him. I said, they're going to call you about a new show, new television show called The Dick Van Dyke Show. He says, what's a Dick Van Dyke? Your guess is as good as mine, but get out here.
Well, here come two people I know you're going to be crazy about, but don't go by me. I voted for Tom Dewey. Well, you know them as the co-stars of the Dick Van Dyke Show, Maury Amsterdam and Rose Marie Ireland.
Look at this sanitarium. Is this beautiful? Is this gorgeous? I think it was built by Frank Lloyd Wrong.
I went along with her because Maury Amsterdam was the human joke machine. We knew about that. And through the years, anytime we needed a one-liner, he gave you 12 possibilities.
This man can make a joke out of any word in the English language. Maybe we have a word.
Come on, any word, somebody with a word, any word.
Horse. Oh, I have a lady, she has a word, horse.
A joke about a horse. Horse. Let me see. If everybody owned a horse, the country'd be more stabilized.
He didn't even have to read. Neither one of us read.
I was amazed at her comedy timing. She and Maury Amsterdam. I learned comedy from those two.
When I saw what was happening in the first couple, I said, you know something? I said, we got a classic. I knew it. This is a classic.
And Carl's writing and the direction, we just knew we had something that was better than most.
You turned on purposely to see it every week.
You believed those characters were real, in spite of all the blocking and the beautiful lighting and how hot they were and how funny and charming. You truly believed that these people were your neighbors. You suspended that disbelief quite successfully. And that we're still trying to do. Big Bang Theory aspires to that immersion.
When asked, what am I most proud of in the history of my career as a performer, writer, I said the Dick Van Dyke Show, hands down. No question about it.
People went crazy that worked with us because Carl's mind, Maury's mind, my mind, we kept finding changes that were better.
Our rehearsals all week were really rewrites. We'd get on our feet, and of course, Rosie and Maury was brilliant stuff came out of them. So the show was very different by the time we shot it than it was on the printed page.
That's why people say, was your show that much ad-lib? No, it wasn't ad-lib, it was scripted, but we would come up with things in the middle of it that they would shove in the script.
We knew that as soon as Rosie put her foot down, we knew that scene was going to work. She was the flagpole. She was so steady.
She always had a way of saying, wait for your laugh, wait for your laugh. She always insisted that I would jump in too soon. Had to wait for my laugh.
In all the years, there was 158 shows. Everybody blew a line. Everybody blew a theme, got in the wrong place, stood in the wrong place, said the wrong. Not Rosemary. She never, ever blew a line.
And nobody got mad at anybody. Nobody yelled at anybody.
She got mad at me a couple of times. When there was something, somebody had a beef, and I was supposed to go up as the star and talk to the producers about it, which I never did. And her nickname for me was the 6-foot tower of Jell-O. And whenever somebody had a beef, she'd say, send the 6-foot tower of Jell-O up there, he'll take care of it.
I mean, you could sit over there. How long do you want me to sit there? You know, go over there, go over there. Never heard him say a bad word about anybody. Well, he was a jellyfish. He could do anything. And he wouldn't say anything about it. I don't think he questioned anything we did. Even the script. I really don't think so.
She kind of thought I was a spineless wimp when it came to that, which is true.
Oh, blood and guts. There he goes. Hasn't got the guts to tell you.
You had a certain amount of sympathy with her, because she was in with all these guys, and it was a man's show in a sense.
I think it's time we appreciated having a bright, attractive gal around the office.
Yeah, when is she going to start work here?
How hard do you think it must have been on a day-to-day basis to be that singular performer in that singular role? It's like still hard to be a woman in a writer's room in real life, let alone playing that character.
Here was this woman fighting for her position in the show and in real life. And she did it. She just mowed him down and said, sit over there and shut up.
It was really tough for women back then, especially for that character that Rosie did, because she was very masculine.
When you look back on it, if that character weren't in it, would we remember this show? Would we study it?
She didn't play the pretty girl, the sexy girl, like a non-sex person. It had nothing to do with sex.
Rose Marie is not sexualized. On the other hand, she hasn't been desexualized. She's constantly talking about dating and dating men, but she's not codependent. She's constantly talking about how ugly they are and what losers they are, these dates she's going on.
And we made jokes about the fact that nobody took into account the fact that she was a lady.
Hey, Mel, how about a little poker game Thursday night?
Oh, fine. Who are the players going to be? No women, I hope.
Nah. No, just buddies, me and Sally.
Count on me.
Maury Amsterdam won't help her lift a heavy typewriter. She's chivalry is dead because she's one of the guys.
Hey, buddy, give me a hand. Very funny. Now, will you help me, please?
Come on, you're stronger than I am. Do it yourself, Mac.
Rose Marie is the high status character in the room. You could admire her. You could want to be her. I would argue probably a lot of dudes maybe back then watched that show and were like, I'm not really the Maury Amsterdam archetype. I'm really kind of the Rose Marie archetype. I want to be a comedy writer, and it had nothing to do with gender, and let alone all the women out there, the little girls watching that show that were like, wait, that's a job? You can have that? You can be creative?
After Lucille Ball, you didn't really come up with any women who were that strong. And the next niche was Rose Marie.
When I got the show, I thought it was going to be Dick and me. I thought Mary was going to be a sideline.
She thought the show was about comedy writers and that the whole show would take place there in the comedy writing office. And that she didn't realize there was going to be also some home with Mary Tyler Moore and me.
I do remember my mother coming home from doing the series and being upset because the show was shifting to Mary Tyler Moore. She would say, I have to fight for the office scenes.
When Rose Marie was offered the job, they said it's about writers in a writer's room. That's what they told her. They didn't tell her it's about a husband and wife who was also a writer. And my life, I wrote about my life. My life was really about my family.
And Carl kept saying, no, it's Mary and Dick. You know, you're the sideline. I couldn't get over that. I didn't understand that because I was supposed to be co-starring. And if you see the credits, it's a Dick Van Dyke show with Rose Marie. I'm the next one lined up.
It's important to note that Mary Tyler Moore, the reason we all know that name is because of how incredible she looks, specifically on that film stock and that lighting.
As soon as the people started taking pictures and covers and, cover of Look magazine, Life magazine, it was Mary. Just the way it was in the office and home, Mary and Rosie hardly ever talked, I don't think. That was a little scary, but it worked for the show.
They weren't best buddies, so to speak. It was professional. How about that? It was professional.
Rosie was always upset. In the first year, she was always upset that she and Maury didn't have enough to do. I could hear both her sighing, the mumbling, and wanting more to do.
Only thing I said, I want more.
It finally got so bad that I had to talk with Rosie, and I said, Rosie, you're the best one that could ever be doing this job, but if you can't stand the fact that the people, the audiences, care more about Mary and Dick as I do. I care more about my family than I do about my workers, and I write about that. I write more deeply about that. I said, that's what the show's about. Unless you can accept that, don't come back. Please don't come back. And I used real strong language. As you both have beautiful legs, they want to look at her legs. Anyway, from then on, we were fine.
Dick came over to me and said, "Does Bobby feel all right?" I said, "Why?" He says, "Because he's leaning up against the chair. That's like Bob." I said, "He's got a cold. He can't get rid of it." We go home. It's getting worse.
They were very, very close. He came to every show and watched every show. They were deeply in love. There was no question about it. They needed each other, they had each other, and they gave to each other.
We went to this doctor, so he examines him and he says, "I'd like to examine it a little further." And Bobby says, "I got to work." He says, "You can't. Call up Bing Crosby and tell him you can't make it." So I left him there. I went to work. The doctor called me and said, "Your husband has hepatitis." That was the going thing that year. Everybody got hepatitis. And Maury came over. Maury says, "What's wrong?" I said, "He's sick. I don't know what's wrong. This guy, I don't like this doctor." "Wait a minute, just a minute. I'll call Jerry. He's got to have the best doctor." He calls Jerry Lewis on the phone. Jerry says, "Look, in 5 minutes, a Dr. Levy is going to call you. You tell him what you just told me." I said, "Okay, thanks, Jerry." He examined him. He says he doesn't have hepatitis. I don't know what he's got, but he says it's some sort of blood infection. Jerry called, and he told the doctor, "Just do everything you can to help this man. He's a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine." I heard that. And they sent his blood all over the world, to find out what was wrong.
And he was so thin. My father was always big.
He was a stocky guy, and he got ill and slowly began to lose weight. And Bobby just wasted away. She was going through the worst experience anyone can go through, just slowly losing a loved one.
But I was trying to do the show at the same time.
And Rosie, being the pro that she is, managed to do that show, and you would never have known the difference. Even if that camera went on, she was the old Rosie.
I had to. That was my job. That was my job. I couldn't let all those other people down. They would have folded up or would have kicked me off the show, which is worse.
But we could see that it was just killing her. Especially the frustration, not even to know what's wrong with him.
I was supposed to do the Carson show. I said, "I can't do it. I'm in no mood to do another show. I'm lucky I'm doing this one." So word comes back, Carson says, "I can't get a replacement. She's got to do the show." You couldn't get a replacement for Johnny Carson. Everybody in the world wanted to do that show. He's like, "I can't get a replacement. She's got to do the show." Okay. So I'll try.
All of you, if you watch television at all, know our next guest. She's been on with me several times, and very big on I can mention the show, it's silly not to mention it, the Dick Van Dyke Show, where she has a major role, and she is delightful. Rose Marie.
I go down there, and we do the show.
Rosie is a fine performer. You break me up every time. We've done a lot of shows together, and we're a good audience for each other. Not, we enjoy each, I think, when we work together.
Very much.
It was Pagliacci. She had to come in to make people laugh, and she was crying all the time, in the dressing room. Pagliacci, recitar mentre preso dalle Dio, about laughing while your insides are crying.
It's easy to grin when your ship comes in, and life is a happy lot. But the man that's worthwhile is the man who can smile when his shorts creep up in a knot.
Get through, and I kissed Johnny on the cheek. And he says, "Do you feel any better?" He said, "I tried to get your mind off of it for a little while." These are angels, these guys. Jerry Lewis, Dr. Levy, Johnny Carson, they're angels to me. Dr. Levy brought Bobby home at one point, and Bobby was home for a little while. Then he had to go back into the hospital. And he died in the hospital in 1964. He was 48 years old. The diagnosis was blood infection. They don't know where it came from or why. And I miss him. We were both at our peaks in our careers. It just fell apart after he left. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. Get me on the subject of my husband. I can't help it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. That was a great marriage. It was a great love affair. Yeah, they really adored each other. When he passed, she started wearing the bow for Bobby. Two things never happened after Bobby died. She never married again. And she never wore a bow in her hair that wasn't black. Two years after Bobby died, Rosemary had to say another goodbye.
Who was booking Hollywood Squares called me up and said, "I want you to do this show. All you got to do is sit up there and talk." Well, that didn't seem too hard.
Rosemary was no stranger to the game show genre. In the late 50s, she was the first female game show host in history. The program was called Scoop the Writers.
And before we have Wendell to explain how our little game plays, I should like to introduce to you three boys. Boys! These guys were boys when Madame Butterfly was a worm.
But at the same time, the popular quiz show 21 was discovered to be rigged and put under congressional investigation. Most networks canceled their game shows. Our celebrity and comedy-driven Hollywood Squares brought the game show back into the American living room.
They got Peter Marshall, who was the best that ever happened. And he's still the best. He knew when to coach you on, he knew when to stop you, he knew when to lead you. He was wonderful.
Listen, Ro, please, we must move along here.
Yes,
These people
move
have to
along.
win cash and prizes. According to Dear Abby, is there a law that can force a man to marry a woman?
Yes, and I think it's called a mother-in-law.
I thought it was going to be a 13-week show, to be frank with you. And of course, I ran 16 years, so you never know what's going to happen in this business.
I was with the show 14 years. And for some reason or other, I was just there. Nobody ever said go home. I was just there.
You know, I never knew any of the jokes. I never knew anything. All I had was the questions.
Important. We were never told what the questions were going to be. And nobody was told anything except be funny, do your best, you know. And we couldn't even pass the people in the hallway of NBC. They didn't want us to talk to any of the contestants because of the scandal that they had. So they were very careful.
It's the easiest thing I ever did. Oh, God, it was fun. It was just fun. It was like a party. And you got paid wonderfully well for this. And it left you open to be able to work Vegas or whatever you wanted to do.
And then I was lucky enough to go to the Doris Day show. Now, Doris had just lost her husband, and I had just lost mine. And I thought, God, we have something in common to begin with. It's going to be cry on whose shoulder, you know? And I went into rehearsal, and she was just unbelievable. She's the greatest lady I've ever known or worked with. For some reason or other, I have never stopped in this business. After I got through doing a play and there were no plays to do, I'd get into something else. I would do my concert act, you know, and concert. If there wasn't enough places around to do that, I would get into television again. And if there wasn't enough television going on, I would make personal appearances. I always went from one thing to the next.
Rosemarie's role on the Doris Day show only lasted 3 seasons.
My mother's at home. She's not working. She's calling her manager every day going, "Why aren't I working? I'm not doing anything. Get me a damn job." Out of this persistence, her manager says, "Well, I'm working on something."
4 girls, 4, take 1. 4 Girls 4 was a strange combination of people. Rosemary Clooney, Helen O'Connor, Margaret Whiting. 4 big egos.
They were each stars in their own right, in their own time, but it had been 15 or 20 years since anyone had been performing on stage, making that kind of noise again.
I thought, who the hell is going to pay money to go see 4 old broads up there on a stage singing with a band?
Yeah, at their age, yeah, but they didn't move like their age.
Miraculously, it caught on right away.
They started to play these theaters and these venues that were huge, and they're sold out. They're sold out.
It was selling out week after week after week. They were selling to 15,000 people a show. You know, they were rock stars.
You've got to be kidding me.
The audiences loved them. I mean, it was standing ovation time. And what was going on backstage? Chaos. Oh, the egos were at it, fighting.
Frankie Ortega, my conductor, he goes with the show, or I don't go.
My mother took charge of the show.
I was the one that put the finale together.
She had to have a closing number.
Learn this, we're gonna do this for the finale.
You do this, you come out here, you do this, you do that.
Oh, come on, Frank. Hold it, Frank. Hold it, Frank. Hold it. You don't seem to understand. See that part where I go, smiling face up by your place. You're not supposed to play in there. See, because I'm going on to the next phrase, and if you're playing that while I'm singing the next phrase, it's not going to sound good, and they're going to think I can't sing, see? So you don't play anything in there. See, that's all me.
Was she stubborn? Was she sweet all the time? Was she a pain in the ass? She was all of those things.
She was no pushover, that's for sure.
She can be the sweetest, most loving person, but you don't want to cross Rosemarie. She'll cut your head off.
I was the production manager, and I had to do the lights and the sound and the touring things, but I also had to act as the, as the peacemaker.
They carried piles of luggage, and everybody had piles of music and piles of costumes.
Hold Rosemarie's bag.
Sure.
Oh, gee. Rosemary, is this your bag? What do you have, rocks in here?
That's just my eyelashes.
And piles of ego.
Helen wasn't that nice. She was a troublemaker.
I love show business. I wouldn't be in it if I didn't.
How'd you love it before? When you go out, you love it.
I adore it.
Helen, when you get out there, do you love it? No. When do you love it? When it's
Never.
over?
I love music. I don't like to perform.
She thought she owned Four Girls Four. And she hated me because I was the one that made all the suggestions and they were taken.
I think it's safe for me now to say this. I haven't said it to anybody before. But walking across the street in New York City one day with Margaret Whiting, Margaret said to me, and this was a woman that always spoke well of people. I mean, she was a gentle, gentle soul, a loving soul. And she said to me, I just want to pull all of Helen's nails out and hold her hands over fire.
There were times we weren't talking to one another for days. And one time, she got in with me for some reason or other. And Clooney says, well, you know how she is. Clooney and I got along great.
Rosemary and Rosemary had a camaraderie like nobody else. They spoke the same language. They both slept till the middle of the afternoon. They both stayed out late at night. I mean, they were party girls. They were a lot of fun.
We knew what we had. We knew that something was good happening to us. And we were very proud of it because every one of us was good, you know? Even Helen.
For Rosemary, it was a wonderful thing because she hadn't been doing that much. And she needed something like that. There was no place to perform anymore. Where are you going to perform?
You have to understand that on the business end, these women before Four Girls Four were probably, $1,000 act, on their own. When they did Four Girls Four, their numbers grew to such a point where they were making tens of thousands of dollars. And then tens of thousands of dollars each week, and then times 38 weeks. So the income level for women in that situation was quite extraordinary.
I kept saying to them, you know how lucky we are at this stage of our life?
Rosemary is always anxious about work. Any performer is good as their last show. When you finish one show, you got to start again. You got to go find another show. Whether it's a show, a recording, a television thing, whatever it is, you have to go find a new one. Well, that's not easy.
I mean, work supersedes everything, always has. I don't want to say it's a drug, but I think in her case, it's a drug. It's something that she has to do all the time. She's never stopped working, ever. Ever. From the time she was a child, she has never stopped. I've literally seen her get on the phone and call Erin Spelling, and she says, I'm not working this week. And the following week, she has a Love Boat.
My resume reads 4 pages, of just episodic guest shots. I've done all the big shows.
She did a couple of Murphy Browns, Caroline in the City, Suddenly Susan, Wings. But it was getting to the parts of playing pain-in-the-ass mother-in-laws that were mean or whatever. She became a character actress.
This is your woman, huh? Dainty little miss, ain't she?
When Gus Van Sant decided to remake Psycho, he needed somebody to play the mother. And who did he get?
Don't you touch me, don't, Norman. Put me down, and I'll walk on my own.
As her daughter, I thought it was typecasting.
Ah, boy? You have the guts, boy? Jesus, it scared the hell out of me.
I saw her do some of the character parts where she played old people. She did wonderful. It was great. But there weren't enough of them.
The last thing that she did was a voice playing a witch in a Garfield cartoon.
I'm free! Free from the prison of that dusty old book!
And she absolutely loved doing that. Loved it. And she was working. Again, she was working. And she was a different person when she did that.
Even though she was willing to play character parts and play old people, it was hard for her to get work.
The frustration of her not working is huge.
Of course she wants to work. She really does want to work.
I feel strange that I'm left. Why am I left? I can't do any more. I can't do anything. What can I do? Go out and do a show again?
Ro, physically is not, she can't run around the block. But mentally, she's as good as ever.
She has told me that she'll lay in bed and she will go over her act in bed, just doing it. And that, is there a way that I can come out in a wheelchair and do my act?
And it's a horrible feeling when your mind is working and your body refuses to be with you.
Now, we're contemporaries. I can still play a little golf. I can still run. I can walk. So I work. I've been on radio for many, many years. Music of Your Life, I've been doing for like 25 years. And I still do a lot of stuff with PBS. So I'm busy. I'm one of the lucky guys.
I've had a 70-year career, and I just made a movie in February. So and I'm not about to retire. Too much fun.
Look, I'm 92 and I'm writing my fourth and my third, maybe fifth biography, believe it or not. I may be the oldest writer ever to have written novels and write this way biographies.
I miss my career. Give $1,000 to do my act right now and show them how it's done. Because nobody does a good act anymore. They smell, all of them. And I want to go out on the stage and show them. That's being conceited. But I'm good. I know I'm good.
She's been overlooked in a lot of areas. She's had multiple Emmy nominations. She's always lost out to someone who passed away that same year. Huge joke in the industry, you don't want to be nominated opposite Rosemary or your life may be in peril. She's an aggressive woman, but she's never been aggressive in pursuing awards. And in this industry, you have to, because you have to nominate, you have to put yourself in for an Emmy. You have to put yourself out there. And she's never been aggressive in pursuing acknowledgement for her work, whereas there are a lot of performers who do.
But the last time I saw Ro, I represented her when she won the Shirley Temple Award. And I said, if anybody should win the Shirley Temple Award, it should be Rosemary, because Ro was to radio and vaudeville what Shirley Temple was to motion pictures.
She started out when she was 3 years of age. The award tonight is the Shirley Temple Award, probably the greatest child star of all time in motion pictures. And Rosemary was 3 years old in radio, probably the greatest child star radio ever had. She was the biggest singing star in America. And she introduced hit after hit after hit. And then she went on the nightclubs. And her life is, she worked with people like Joey Lewis and the Ritz Brothers and Milton Berle when she was a kid. When she was a kid with all these people, she used to work for, seriously, Al Capone. That's not a joke. And I'm just so proud to have her as my buddy and my friend. And I'm very proud to be able to present to her the Shirley Temple Award. I have no idea where the award is.
The Shirley Temple Award was created to acknowledge an individual who was able to make a transition from child star, in her case, baby Rosemary, to adult star with ease and with recognition, constantly working. She never stopped. She's one of the very few that continued to work, didn't just stop.
Is this on?
It's on. It's on. Yeah, it's on. It's on. gotta dance.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. You can sit down now.
Thank you.
What a wonderful group you people are to do this and to give it to me. I mean, Shirley Temple was something very special. I was going to tell you all about her, but somebody else did that. I was going to tell you about me, but Peter did that. So I have nothing to say except I hope the salad's good. I think, you know, I'm so used to telling a joke that I've got to tell you a joke. This guy dies and goes to heaven. And he goes and he says to St. Peter, I want to see the Lord. St. Peter says, I have to talk to the Lord. Goes to the Lord, he said, there's a guy out here who wants to see you. He says, go back and ask him what he did. He goes back to the guy says, what did he do down there? Well, I gave an old man $1 once. That's good. Goes back to the Lord, he says, man says he gave him $1 once. He says, ask him what else he did. Goes back, he says, Peter, you got to find out from the Lord, what else did you do? I gave an old lady $1 once. Goes back to the Lord and he says, gave an old lady $1 once. What'll I do? Lord looked at him, he said, I tell you what, give him his $2 back and tell him to go to hell. I thought I'd leave him laughing.